Hello!
Hello AOS fans!
It's the Agents of Weird Hollow.
And in this video, I'm going to give you 5 warbands to play with the not entirely new, but not that old either, Voidcursed deck. Yeah, I almost dismissed the Voidcursed deck when it came out. I didn't quite know what to do with it. I quite liked it as a concept.
Yeah.
But I wasn't, like I say, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. And it certainly didn't fit with the Headsman's Curse. Because they've just got so many brilliant faction cards, and they came out at the same time. We were really focused on them, I think, because they were quite powerful and undead. And
they were, I think Headsman's were definitely the much more, oh my god, release out of the two.
Exactly, and now I almost literally forgot them. Like Pete and I were sitting here trying to remember what they were.
Just as a start, we were like, what was the third warband to come out like 2 months ago?
I think it's because we haven't. I don't know whether the tournament might bring them back into play for us because they were pretty strong.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Interesting to see. But the Voidcursed deck, I think, is well worth playing. Because it's brilliant for older warbands.
It's got some good shenanigans in there. So for people who don't know, the idea is to spread the Void Curse amongst all the fighters on the board. And if you are Void Cursed, you have a bunch of effects.
Yeah, so there's like push stuff, do extra moves, help support, do all sorts of things. But you also have a plot card.
Yeah,
it does have a plot card, which kind of boosts some of the weaker warbands, which is why I think it probably lends itself, as you'll see from our list, lends itself to older warbands because they are weaker, and one of the things it mainly does is it gives you 1 shield. Well, 2 shield or 2 dodge were pretty unheard of in the Shadespire days, so it's good with most of those because it has no effect, whereas when you start void cursing your opponent's fighters, anything with 2 dodge or 2 shield suffers. So
it also stops them from being able to be pushed back, so if you are playing a warband that needs to get on objectives and stay there, you've got less chance of getting knocked off and more chance of being able to hold them and score your objective.
A drawback of it is that you can't use range 3 attacks, but again, unless you're playing Fast Riders, there weren't very many of those in the early seasons.
And the last thing was that you couldn't use special actions. You can only move, attack and charge. So for some warbands, there is a small problem there in the earlier seasons, but you could just wait until the end before you void curse those fighters.
Yeah, although again, it's not very many of them. I know your favourite, but there are other early warbands other than Sepulchral Guard, Pete.
No, you've lost me.
But most of them don't. Most of them just
So now we're going to give you our 5 warbands that we think would play well with the Voidcursed. Number 1.
For number 1, we're going right back to the start,
Way back.
Pete's early favourite, and still, I think we both have a softness for Garrek's Reavers. I think because they are almost the game when it's most joyous, even though it is like smashing people's faces
and stabbing
and
chopping things
and stuff. But it just, if you just want a fun evening of slinging dice and not really caring what the consequences are,
not having to think too much about where you're going to be at the end of it because you're probably going to be dead.
Garrek's Reavers are really good, and they're really good with the Void Curse because they get a defensive boost because none of them go to 2 dodge.
Exactly.
So
they don't have any range 3 attacks. They don't have any special abilities. They lose nothing, and also not being able to be pushed back means if they charge in and chop somebody and they don't kill them, they have cards which enable them to make bonus attacks sometimes. So you're then still next to that person, and you can then chop them in the head.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've got some, there's some their own juicy cards in their faction. They've got some quite extra good pluses. They've got the one that enables you to draw cards, so you can draw into more void curseness. The extra void curse pushes mean that you could be doing attacks sort of till the cows come home. So I think Garrek's is a really good choice. I'm quite looking forward to one of us bringing those out.
Yep.
Number 2.
From one of the very first warbands to one of the most recent warbands, it's Skavik's Plague Pack.
Well, I'm glad you're consistent, and because you put that in the warbands, the decks to play with Skavik.
I did,
and you brought it in here too.
I did, and all the same reasons still apply. Most of them are 1 dodge or maybe 1 shield. So going to 1 shield generally doesn't do them any harm. They don't have any range 3 attacks. They want to stand on objectives, so that all works well in their favour.
They haven't got very many of their own abilities.
No, there's 1, and you just maybe don't void curse them.
And again, the void curse shenanigans help them get around the board to where they want to be, to where they can vomit plague upon your house.
Exactly.
You can be void cursed and plagued.
Yeah, you can. A plague void curse, void plague cursed.
And as I said in the other video, the little rat can weave in and out and go around void cursing people left, right, and centre.
There you go. Number 3.
Now I'm really thrilled about this. It's like, I guess they're almost like Garrek's.
We don't get often a chance to say this.
Godsworn Hunt. And I think everybody loves the Godsworn Hunt. Anybody from that era of the game loves Godsworn Hunt because they are terrible.
They are absolutely
But they're actually
woeful.
slightly less terrible with the Voidcursed deck, because they almost none of them go to
2 dodge or 2 shield.
2 dodge or 2 shield. You've got to be careful with poor old Olo, who's only got a bow.
Yeah. And Jagger Thrust. Make sure she lobs her javelin early.
Yeah. Then that's not ideal. But other than that, I mean, they always were just charge and hope for the best, and probably you'd be dead later. And so it doesn't really matter. So you could charge in, throw off some Void Curse effects to Void Curse your opponents, and because I have to say, we kind of differ on this a little bit, but I think if you're playing the Void Curse deck, you have to play the card, which is 4 glory for Void Cursing every fighter on the board.
I mean, if everybody ends up mostly dead and you've only got like 1 or 2 fighters left that are Void Cursed, it's just 4 easy glory.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that certainly if you're playing Godsworn Hunt, that's how it's going to go. They have got some good attacks.
Yeah.
And actually boosting them to 1 shield, especially with the card that also makes dodges successes. They get a little bit stronger.
Get a little bit more survivable.
Yeah.
You're like, you charge a Granda and he kills someone and then he doesn't die immediately. And you're like, what's going on? I don't understand.
Especially as you then have the card, which means you can throw off attacks for Void Curse fighters. It's not a great attack, but it is an attack.
It's an attack.
And it can do some damage.
Every little helps.
And because you've got cards like Path to Glory and some other +1 damage cards, that card gets a +1 damage.
Yeah.
And then so actually that attack can be really quite nasty. So there are definite synergies there which you don't normally get with the Godsworn Hunt. So I played it once and it was really good fun, so I definitely want to play it again. Number 4.
We're going back to season 1 again, and you might be seeing a pattern here, but it's the Sepulchral Guard.
Now, Pete does love his Sepulchral Guard. He's pretty much, I mean, he was trying to convince me Seismic Shock should be played with the Sepulchral Guard. I'm not quite sure about that. But they have got a good case of being Void Cursed, and mainly their numbers. Yeah,
they've got a lot of numbers, and their fighters don't die easily. No. So if you put upgrades on them, you can bring them back and reutilise those upgrades.
My experience is that they do die easily, but they just die multiple times.
They don't stay dead, or they are already dead. Either which way, they don't generally stay off the ball for very long, especially the later iteration of the Sepulchral Guard.
Yeah, one of our guys was literally just killing them all the time, and they just kept coming back and back and back, and so I couldn't score the objective for having more people dead because I just couldn't get there. They do have one big drawback, particularly if you're playing against the Void Cursed deck, but you do have to be careful because the Warden is the linchpin, literally almost, and he does all the pushes, and if he somehow accidentally ends up Void Cursed,
you are in trouble.
You're in trouble. So I'm slightly dubious whether that makes them a good. I mean, I can see the bonuses, but I still, as I've already said, I believe you should definitely be playing that card, which is 4 glory, and you can't really play that with the Sepulchral Guard.
You can't with Sepulchral Guard easily, at least, unless you just go on a deliberate sort of binge of just attacking and stuff rather than raising anybody back.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect to it. Not being driven back helps you with your score objective, your hold objective score objectives, and moving everybody up to a shield. Whilst the later iteration, more of the fighters do roll shields than they used to. Not all of them do. No. So boosting them up to a shield does help their survivability.
Yeah. So I can see why you choose it.
There's potential. Then number 5.
Well, an obvious choice would be the Chosen Axes. Because they've only got shields anyway, a bit of extra push, but I'm not going to go for an obvious choice. Partly because I still don't think they're that good. Drom, about one of the very few, apart from Scavix, who you picked already, later warbands that I think can actually consider using the Void Curse. I think the Void Curse wrecks pretty much every other sort of season 4 onwards warband. I mean, there probably are something it doesn't, but so many of them have got special attacks. So many of them have 2 dodge. So many of them have range attacks,
or 2 shields, or special abilities.
Yeah,
or
exactly. So it just feels like. But Drom, you call again. You know where you are. But he's basically. I think they're all 1 shield, so they don't have any benefits there. They want to fight. Yeah. Not being pushed back is good.
Yeah. They've got no range 3 attacks.
No, it's all smash. I think there's a card for like healing stuff as well. That's really good for the big lad.
Yeah, I guess the only drawback might be that Drom has his own special ability to make somebody charge. But again, you just maybe Void Curse him later on in the game because it's hard to accidentally Void Curse your own fighters. You can generally be quite targeted with that.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I maybe I'm not very good at playing Drom, but I barely use that ability anyway. I mean, I can see where it can be clutch because you've got things for having multiple charges in there and stuff.
So there are 5 warbands that we would suggest you try with the Void Curse. Do try them out and let us know how you get on with them.
Yeah, it's a fascinating deck, the Void Curse deck, and I think it really shows, I think we mentioned at the time, but it really shows that GW are kind of thinking out of the underworld's box.
So don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell.
Absolutely, and I feel like I've said it a lot of times this evening, and you've already watched this one video, but please do consider supporting us on Patreon. We really do value the support, and it helps us make more and more content. Pete and I are going through a bit of a change, but that's what happens when you get to our age. You know, we're reprioritising the stuff, so we want to kind of plough things back into the channel, make it as good as we possibly can.
Yep. And we do have a Nemesis tournament going this September, and all our Patreon supporters will get a discount on tickets. Ooh. So we'll see you soon in the Weird Hollow. Bye!